Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and you can find more information about today's cards and more projects on my blog at stampingwithhart.blogspot.com. So today I wanted to create some really pretty spring cards, but that were easy to make and sort of bring together. So for me, this is easy, handmade springtime cards, the 2023 version. And, for those of you who maybe have been under the weather like me, or if you are dealing with the winter blues and you are so ready for spring, I think you're really going to enjoy this video. So we are going to be making a card very similar to this layout. But before I get into that, I just wanted to mention our paper pumpkin kit for March 2023 is going to have a free stamp set. It's going to have a bonus stamp set in addition to the one that comes in the kit. March is Paper Pumpkin's birthday month. They're also celebrating their 10th anniversary this year, which is why it's called 10 Years of Growth. You can get a really nice sneak peek, even just by the design on the box and everything that's around it. It's going to be a really beautiful kit. So I would say if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe. If you need to sort of reactivate your subscription, or if you skipped a month, I would say make sure you're, reactivated so that you can get your kit. You have to subscribe by March 10th, 2023. So as of right now, I'm recording this on March 7th. I think I'm going to be posting it on March 8th. So just depending on when this hits, there will either be only 3 or 2 days left to subscribe. I will have information on Paper Pumpkin in the description box below. And we are going to be using the Eden's Garden stamp set for our cards today. We're also going to be using that long die on my table from Eden Dies. Now, this is what all of the dies look like from Eden Dies, just to give you a feel for what this die set looks like. It's really beautiful and detailed, but we're only going to be working with the one die today, and that's this edge die that cuts one side and not the other. We're going to be creating a really beautiful trim look on the front of our card front with this die. So in addition to that sort of, leafy design pattern that we're seeing, there's also some stitching, which is a really nice guide for when we're going to line up our paper. So that's the die that we're going to be working with. We're going to be using the brushed brass butterflies. These are beautiful, perfect for spring. We're also going to be using the Hues of Happiness Designer Series paper. I'm using some different color combinations here, and it's all based on the coordinating colors from the Hues of Happiness Designer Series paper, which has a really wide range of coordinating colors. And I really love that, because for those of you who don't have all the colors, you will still have something in your collection to work with or match back to. And then we're also going to be using a variety of ribbons. So this bordered Night of Navy ribbon, the Pool Party Grosgrain ribbon, and then I also used a little bit of the Parakeet Party metallic ribbon. So we're going to make a card together here in this video today using this same layout. We're going to start with the die cutting, actually. Now, I'm using the same size card base for each card. I'm using basic white for each card. The measurements on this are going to be 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4.25 inches. What we want to do is take this die. We want to line this up. We want the edge of that die to hit along the edge of our card. Make sure your card is not folded. Make sure it's laying open on the plate. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. I have just a tiny bit of washi tape here to hold this in place, because this can tend to slide around. And I want to make sure I get the full design there, but I want it to be as close to the edge as possible. And because this is a detailed die, I recommend running this back and forth just a couple of times, maybe 2 or 3 times. And that's just for extra, insurance for me, just to make sure that it cuts through cleanly. But typically there's no issue whenever you're cutting through these detailed dies. Like I said, this is the basic white cardstock. This is the regular basic white. We also have a thick version. So this is the thinner of the two. And now you can see when I was removing that die, I was kind of gently pulling back on the edges and working my way to the middle so that that detailed die piece did not rip. So you just want to make sure you don't just tug it away. Just take just about 30 seconds and you're just going to wiggle it out. And it should be perfectly fine. Or you can take your pick tool, the pokey tool, to kind of poke the little pieces out there. So once that edge is cut, you're going to have a 3.5-inch panel left down to that stitch line. And the reason why that's important is because if you want to do a background piece in a different cardstock color, like we're going to do on our card here, you're going to want to cut that to 3.5 by 5.5 inches. And that way we're still going to see that detailed stitching and we're still going to see that detailed edge. Now for the card that we're doing in this video, we're going to be using Granny Apple Green as our layer, our cardstock layer here, that's going to cover the majority of the front panel piece. And then we're going to go over the measurements of the other pieces for this card as well. So what I'm saying here is that when you're lining this up, you can still see that stitching. So I'm going to focus on gluing my panel down at the top of the card where it's scored, and then letting that little bit of stitching shine through. Now for our designer series paper, we're going to do 3.25 by 5.25. And again, that's the Hues of Happiness designer series paper. This is one of their really lush floral pieces, but you'll see shortly that there's a lot of variety with the patterns in this designer series paper pack. All perfect, absolutely perfect for spring. So like I said, if you're kind of feeling those winter blues, or you're feeling like you're in a crafty rut and you really want to kind of get a little, pep back in your step, do something that has these bright, beautiful colors or bright, beautiful florals. And if you're not a florals person, you can still flip over the pattern and use the other side. So the other side of the designer series paper is more pattern based, or it has more of like a color paint kind of a look to it. So there will be two sides that you'll get to see here soon in a minute. So those are those first two pieces there. I recommend cutting a piece of ribbon about 7 inches, 6.5, 7 inches, something that you can wrap and tuck those edges behind the designer series paper panel. So that's just something that I personally like to do. Or if you don't like to wrap it around the panel, you can just trim a decorative edge before it comes to the edge of the designer series paper. This strip is 1 inch by 5.5 inches. And this is the piece that's going to go behind that beautiful decorative edge to really help bring out that design so that we can really see it. And this is more of that paint pattern that I'm talking about. So with each one of my cards, I took whatever the pattern was on the top panel, which has a little bit more of the decorative element, and then the bottom is really just more of a complementary color in that paint style or in that paint pattern. So it's all from the same paper pack, just the opposite sides. And then here we have a 2 by 3.25 piece of basic white cardstock. That's going to be for our greeting. That's where we're going to do our stamping. And then I have another layer here, 2.25 by 3.5, also Granny Apple Green, and that's just going to be a layering piece for our little greeting panel for the front of our card. So that is the basics of the card, and then we're just going to add a light embellishment by having one large and one small brushed brass butterfly, just kind of framing around our sentiment here. So this particular card is a pool party and then night of navy with these little pops of floral here. And then this version is Daffodil Delight, so saffron actually for the ink on that one. And then we're using that bordered ribbon, the Night of Navy bordered ribbon. And then this version is a little more bold. This is a Melon Mambo, where I used a brighter ink, but I used less of it, less of the image stamped in the opposite corners. And then one of those bold floral patterns, but has that Night of Navy base. I thought that one turned out really, really well. I actually loved how they all turned out. And then this card that we're going to be making here together is a combination of Granny Apple Green, Fresh Freesia, Pool Party, and then just a very light hint of gorgeous grape with the ink that we're going to be using. So if I haven't already mentioned it, there's going to be a free project sheet available for these cards. So if you're looking for the measurements, the instructions, the different colors that I use, the coordinating colors, it's all going to be in that free project sheet. And I will also have it on my blog at stampingwithhart.blogspot.com. And I spell Hart Hart because that is the spelling of my last name. So stampingwithhart@blogspot.com, and you'll be able to find the measurements there as well. So if you like to see full-length replays with the conversation and all of that, I keep those on my Facebook page, also called Stamping with Hart. But on my YouTube channel, typically I edit it down to tutorial only. So just depending on what you prefer, if you don't like parts of the video being sped up, I just like to mention that. But for those of you who are crafting along with me, I think this is a shorter length of video for that. And of course, you would have access to getting the project sheet as well. So here I am showing that designer series paper where we have these two sides and these different options. So you can see we can coordinate those paint patterns with the florals and with the different design patterns that they have here. Look at how lush this paper is. So this is available in our annual catalog, 2022 to 2023 annual catalog from Stampin' Up. Sometimes, when we get caught up with the mini catalog and the online exclusives, we kind of forget about the annual catalog designer series paper. But what had happened was I have been sick for like the last week and a half. I've really sort of been down and out. And I was laying on the couch. I was watching TV, which is something I don't typically do anymore. And I was watching a spring fashion event on a home shopping channel. It was all weekend, and I was just seeing the most beautifully styled outfits, well accessorized, all of the bright, beautiful spring colors. And all I kept thinking to myself was, how can I turn this into a card? And when it was time for me to come back into the craft room, I was like, okay, how can I take that spring feeling? It was so fun to watch it and to see that. I was so inspired, and I thought, I want to turn that spring fashion and transfer that into a card. And that was what made me think of the Hues of Happiness designer series paper, which I don't know. You may think that that's silly or not. You can let me know in the comments. I'm not really a fashion person. Like, I don't, style my outfits and all of that. Like, busy mom, don't really do any of those things anymore. But it just felt so nice to sit there and watch that. And because I am a card maker, my mind always goes to, okay, how can I turn this into that? And I think that you can see just by looking at that pattern, looking at these different florals and the rainbow and all of that, it's such a breath of fresh air. I thought this is what's going to help me kind of get back on track. So for those of you, like I said earlier, we're all going through cold and flu season. We're all sort of, kind of really at the end of, we really want this winter weather to be done so that we can go into spring, or at least let me just speak for myself and say, I am so ready for spring. My son is so ready for spring. So here, I was having a hard time like getting back into the craft room, and it can be hard, right? Like, I don't know if I necessarily want to call it a crafting rut, but I really was struggling, like, what card am I going to make? And I thought, you know what? I bet there's a lot of people out there feeling like me. And so the whole concept of this card was to make it nice and easy. So if you don't have a lot of time, or if you feel like you've lost your crafting mojo, I'm hoping that with our color combinations, with an easy card layout, but it's still pretty and it's still very spring, that it will help you feel better and get re-energized and, get ready to just get full on into that spring crafting as we move, we're kind of coming up on St. Patrick's Day, and then we're heading into Easter after that. And so this could be a really great, I hope, card layout to keep you inspired as we make this transition to spring. And you might already be in full swing of making your spring cards. I'm not sure, but you'll have to let me know. So let's go ahead and get a little bit more specific into our stamping now. This is the Fresh Freesia ink. And what I recommend is use any very light colored ink. So for example, on 3 of the 4 cards, in this card that I'm showing you right here, this is Melon Mambo. So this is a little bit brighter. And I had used a different corner of the same stamp than this one. So here I stamped the whole image, but on either side of the sentiment panel. And then you can also stamp in the corners. So if you're stamping with a light color like we're about to do right here, I thought it's fine to do a fuller image. I didn't want to stamp it directly in the center. You could do that, but I thought, let me come in on either side. So this is what the image looks like in Fresh Freesia. It's really nice and light. So you could do layered stamping technically, where you could do a sentiment right over top and you would be able to very clearly read it, right? So we're going to come in on the left side and we're just going to do a partial stamped image. And we're going to flip our stamp so that we have that same exact edging. And we're going to do that same exact stamp on the other side. So we're just going to come in on our right side now using that same edge, just so that we have some consistency. And then just like that, we have a really fresh, pretty spring look, just really soft. This is a beautiful background stamp. It doesn't, there's detail in it, but you don't get lost in the image. You know, you can still stamp your sentiment. Now, giving examples of different ways that you can use the same image. If you wanted to come in to your corners just with a different part of the stamp than what I just did, then you could stamp it this way. And if you would prefer to use a more bold color, if you like to go more for the brights or for the darker colors, like the Regals, for example, then you could do less of the image in a really bright color and then just leave it white where you're going to stamp your image so that it's not competing. So when they're reading their greeting, they're not looking for it. So the top edge has that little splatter pattern in the corner. And then these bottom edges, I'm actually coming in with a different angle of the leaf. So just even right there, just with this simple stamping, if we cut this piece in half, you can just add just a little bit of detail and a hint of that just by coming in with different angles of the same stamp. So that is, I highly recommend Eden's Garden. It's really beautiful. You may have picked it up during Celebration. It is available in our annual catalog, so you may have had it already there. But if you haven't gotten it yet, I will have a full product list of where you can find all of these items, and you can purchase it with the March host code. Now, I just stamped the Dear Friend sentiment in gorgeous grape ink, just very simple. And that's it for our stamping for this card. So that's what I mean about just sort of coming back into making your cards with more of a simpler design, where we just did 3 very simple stamps there, 2 colors. So whatever 2 colors, you know, you happen to have in your collection, you can do that. So we're adhering that designer series paper strip along the very bottom edge of the inside panel. Now I'm just basically, we're going to assemble our card. So the Granny Apple Green panel is going to go on first. And like I said, I'm lining that edge up with the score line at the top. And then that way our stitching is still going to show at the bottom. And now here, I'm just adding a little bit of adhesive to the back of my panel. And I like to do this to tuck my edges. I just think it looks neater, but you could apply the ribbon however you're comfortable. And then we're actually going to pop this whole panel up on Stampin' Dimensionals and add it to the card. I liked dimension for this card, but if you would like this card to be perfectly flat, you could very easily do that just by switching out the ribbon for maybe a strip of Pool Party cardstock or the designer series paper that coordinates. And then what we're going to do is we're going to adhere our greeting panel to our second layer of the Granny Apple Green. And we're going to pop this panel up on dimensionals as well. And we're going to put this right center in the card right over the ribbon. So it's just sort of a centered look. And then we're going to finish this with our brushed brass butterflies. It's not easy for me to say that like 3 times fast. It's so cute, you know. So just a really simple, pretty card. You can see I just did exactly the same thing on each of the cards. So I wanted this card to be pretty and repeatable. And I wanted to use, the same designer series paper, but show you the different looks that were possible with it. And I'm very curious to see what you think. Have you started your spring card making yet? Or, have you been feeling like you haven't been able to get in your craft room and stamp or make your cards? Let me know. I would love to know how you guys are getting motivated in the craft room too. Now, here are our 4 finished cards. I want to thank all of you for being here. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would love to have you subscribe. I do crafting tutorials weekly, typically. I also do a lot of paper pumpkin alternate videos, and I just want to shout out that reminder again to make sure you get subscribed to Paper Pumpkin by March 10th. I'm actually running a special where anybody who purchases a 3 or 6 month prepaid subscription to Paper Pumpkin with me in the month of March with my March host code will get a free past paper pumpkin kit from me as a gift. So if you have any questions about that, you can direct message me, you can email me. I'd be happy to chat with you about it. And I will have all of the shop links listed on my blog and also in the project sheet. So thank you so much. I appreciate you spending your time, commenting, liking the video. It helps so much. And be sure to stay tuned to the next tutorial. Bye-bye.